Welcome, cycling enthusiasts and curious minds alike, to our revealing series titled The Fall of the Bike Industry, a saga of resilience, adaptation and survival as we venture into the heart of the biking world, shaken to its core by the unexpected adversary, the COVID-19 pandemic. As we pedal through this journey, we will uncover the dark secrets that mark the path of the bike industry during these unprecedented times. From bustling bike shops to silent showrooms, from roaring races to deserted trails, we'll explore how the industry navigated this uncharted territory. So, tighten your helmet straps and prepare for a thrilling ride into the unknown. Stay tuned as we delve into the initial impact of the pandemic on the bike industry in our next scene. This is a ride you won't want to miss. How did the COVID-19 pandemic affect the bike industry? An intriguing question indeed. The initial impact was swift and unexpected. In spring of 2020, the biking world was buzzing. The inaugural Chubb Enduro race in St. Louis had just concluded, and the construction of the first municipally funded bike skills park was underway. Then, the pandemic struck. The following Monday, a wave of shutdowns swept across the industry. Bike shops, the lifeblood of the biking community, were forced to close their doors. But the spirit of the industry was not so easily quelled. Adapting to the new normal, these shops began to offer curbside sales. Yet this resilience was not without its challenges. As the summer wore on, bikes began to sell out. Manufacturers and shops were faced with back orders that went from a 6-month lead time to a staggering 18 months by the end of summer. The industry was forced to adapt, but this was just the beginning. As summer arrived, an unexpected shift occurred. With the warm winds, there was a surge in demand for bicycles. People, cooped up indoors due to the pandemic, were yearning for the freedom and mobility that bikes offered. Bike shops, initially shuttered, began to see a flurry of activity. They adapted and innovated, offering curbside sales to cater to this sudden influx of customers. But the bike industry was not prepared for such an unprecedented demand. Shops started running out of stock. The sight of empty racks became eerily common. In response, bike shops began placing back orders with manufacturers. What was initially a 6-month lead time for new orders rapidly ballooned to an astounding 18 months by the time the last leaves fell. This was a summer of scarcity, a summer of waiting, a summer of unfulfilled promises. Summer ended with an ominous sign of things to come, as bike shops struggled to keep up with demand. As autumn leaves began to fall, so too did the first dominoes in the bike industry's decline. Mountain bike brands, sensing the windfall of increased demand, embarked on a strategy of expansion. They opened new dealers left and right, capitalizing on the swelling tide of customers. However, this growth often came at the expense of the very retailers that had stood by these brands through thick and thin. Meanwhile, the clock kept ticking. As the fall of 2020 rolled around, brands began missing their estimated time of arrival dates. Initially, these delays were met with understanding. The world was in the grip of a pandemic after all, but then a worrying trend emerged. Larger orders were being prioritized over smaller ones, disrupting the long-standing principle of first in, first out. The most disconcerting part of this all was the lack of transparency. Brands did not communicate these changes to bike shops. Instead, they pointed fingers at shipping delays, using them as a convenient scapegoat for missed ETAs. The bike shops were left in the dark, their trust in the brands they had supported for years gradually eroding. In the face of these challenges, the bike industry was beginning to show cracks. The foundational trust between brands and retailers was eroding, setting the stage for a more significant fallout. The lessons we learned in elementary school about waiting our turn and being honest with each other were forgotten, and the consequences of this would reverberate for years to come. The repercussions of these actions were not immediate, but they were far-reaching. The bike industry, once an epitome of a well-oiled machine, was now a place of chaos and disorder. The brands, in their haste to capitalize on increasing demand, had disrupted the smooth functioning of the supply chain. Their actions had a domino effect. Retailers, long-standing partners of these brands, were left high and dry, their trust eroded. The brands had prioritized short-term gains, ignoring the long-standing relationships that had sustained them for years. This shift in approach not only affected the immediate supply, but had a lasting impact on the industry's dynamics. Over the next 5 years, the consequences of these actions unfolded. The supply chain, once robust and reliable, was now fraught with delays and uncertainty. Retailers, left in the lurch by the brands, struggled to meet consumer demands. The trust that once existed between brands, retailers, and consumers was now a thing of the past. The fallout was not just limited to supply chain disruptions. The industry as a whole was shaken to its core. The actions of the brands had sown seeds of distrust, and the industry was now reaping the bitter fruits. The ripple effects of these actions were felt across the industry, affecting everyone from the manufacturers to the end consumers. The bike industry had changed, and not for the better. The lessons learned from this experience, patience, honesty, and commitment, are not just elementary school virtues, they are the cornerstones of any successful industry. We hope you found this episode enlightening. As we've seen, staying informed about the bike industry is not only important for consumers, but for the industry's health as well. The actions of brands and individuals have a significant impact on the industry's overall functioning. When they prioritize short-term gains over long-term stability, they risk damaging not just their own reputation, but the entire industry's integrity. But there's more to this story. To truly understand the depth of the issue, we need to look closely at those responsible. That's why we're inviting you to subscribe to MTB Shed on YouTube. In our next video in the series, we'll be exposing the brands and people responsible for the fall of the bicycle industry throughout the pandemic. Don't miss out on this eye-opening journey into the darker side of the bike industry. Subscribe today and stay informed. Together, we can make a difference.